no other person except the Welsh could breathe and exchange breath with the sheep and stimulate their microbiology the same. And this science is starting to come out. Let me begin by introducing myself, perhaps is the best way. So, Yat Eshik Ado Shadane. Greetings, my kin and my people. Um, that's the first thing out of our mouth as Dene people. We say kin and my people, to establish that kinship right off the bat and that camaraderie and that love. She'e Nanisht Ejetchachitni Nishla. I am from the Nanisht Ejetchachitni clan of the Dene Nation. We are what is also incorrectly known as Navajo. And we actually are indigenous to what's now called New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. But, they called us Navajo, which is not our name. We're Dene. And we're related to the Nde, which are also called Apache, the Deni, the many different nations from Alaska all the way down to northern Mexico. We're a large language group, and we have a much larger nation than American reservation systems let on. So anyways, that's my first clan, which I got from my mother. And in our culture, you get your last name from your mother. So that's sort of my main name is Nanisht Ejetrachini. That's my family name. My second clan comes from my father's mother. So the first clan is your mom's mom, and the second clan is your other matrilineal line, which is your father's mother. So that would be the Tsessis, Southern Cheyenne Nation. And the third clan would be the Ashihe, would be my mother's father's clan, which is the Ashihe, which is the Salt clan of the Dene, because my mom's parents were Dene. Ado, my father's father, is my fourth clan, my Nulle clan, as we call it. And that is the Bilagana clan, which is basically American or Euro-American clan. Very vague clan. A clan invented after many centuries of profound violence and duress. So the invention of that clan might not have been as clear or done in the same way that we invented clans prior to colonization. Because what it actually means is the ones that we fight with. So it's kind of funny for one of my clans to be the ones that I fight with. But we're part of, I think, what we're talking about on this call is reclanning ourselves as, at least, it could be a topic of conversation if we want, is reclanning ourselves as Euro descendants. And I think that's a lot of what I've set out to do over the past few years, because I always put a lot of emphasis on my mother line, which is good. It's what we're supposed to do. But I kind of forsook my father line because I didn't have a lot of interest in being European because of my upbringing as in the native culture. But I started to gain interest in it actually over time. And I realized that I couldn't be whole unless I truly felt and honored all of myself. So that's sort of the Dene way of introducing, is you explain the clan affiliation of each of your four grandparents, starting with the mother's mother. And Taos, New Mexico, so originally I'm from Taos, New Mexico. And in that manner, I present myself as a Dene woman. So, the funny thing about Dene is it actually means the people, or even more broad, it can mean being. Um, so, for instance, we have what we call the um, the clouds, the Kostane, like the cloud people or the cloud beings. We call even the cold is a people. The huskas dene, is the cold people, the coldness that comes in the fall. And the cold is seen as a being, and it's not lifeless or dead. It's actually a blessing. We're taught to breathe it in and bless ourselves with it. And on and on and on. Everything is a being. So funny thing about being Dene is you're not really a race of people. You're more just a being. And the word for human is Nahokadi in Dene, which means Nahoka means like earth surface. Dien means sacred, and Dene means people. So Nahokadi and Dene means that we're the earth, sacred earth surface beings. So with that, we don't go into anything under the earth. That's not for us. It's not our territory. Likewise, we don't go anything above the earth. So technically, I'm not supposed to be in airplanes, but I do anyways. And I am considering a life without airplanes. So the earth surface people are grateful and happy with what the creator gave us on the earth's surface. So we don't need to go beyond that. We don't need to drill into the earth for minerals. We don't need to drill for oil, uranium. Don't need to drill out water from the aquifers. Now, what's unfortunate is that the process of colonization, hundreds of years of it, intensive colonization, sadly has driven my people to mine all of those things out of our homelands in recent years. But that's not traditional. That's something that we did again under circumstances of extreme violence and poverty and duress. So, but yeah, to be a being, it's not a racial thing. And when the Bilagana clan came into being, the American clan or the Euro American clan, um, it seems to me as though it was the first time we created a clan that was not honored, I guess, because all the other clans have very honorable or at least neutral names, whereas this one was sort of like the ones we fight with. So at that time, we were under such stress. We had just been on a death march. Thousands of us had just died in an American concentration camp. So this clan name was created under a situation of extreme duress, and I feel like that's a parallel for a lot of situations where our identity is Euro, whatever it may be, um, Euro Australian, Euro American, Euro anything, was fomented and arose from some pretty challenging ashes. So, not just the clans other people gave us as Euro Americans, but even the clans that were produced out of our own situations of warfare, our own um, identities that were formed after witch hunts, after Roman invasions, after inquisitions, and on and on and on, crusades, etc. So I think that's why we need to reclan, um, is because that's not who we are. Um, and I can get more into that. But before I do, I'd love if people could just put in the chat, where you're or where you're calling in from. Would be cool. Um, and also maybe just what are you interested in hearing about tonight? And maybe you're not particularly interested in any one direction. Um, but if you are, I'd love to see what it is. What are you interested in diving into tonight? What are you interested in exploring tonight? So yeah, um, that is a good um, way to start, perhaps, and take your time. There's no rush. Mm, thank you for sharing, Matthew. Gubby Gubby Lands, Sunshine Coast. I've been to Australia once, and it was a profound experience. I don't know what the proper name is besides Australia. Um, Bunjalung, yep, that's where I went. Um, Byron Bay, and that was a powerful time. Thank you for sharing each of your thoughts about this. And if you have any specific questions, feel free to drop them in the chat at any time. It's a very fluid call. But yeah, so reclanning to me is because we're not inventing a clan, we're reclanning, in my opinion. We're not clanning uh, because we all already have our clans. They're already there. Um, we just don't know them because of colonization. And so to me, we talk about decolonization often as a thing that Native Americans do. But I think that we as Euro European descent people, we have a deeper challenge because, my mom's side of the family, my Dene side, our culture is buried under about 150 years of American terrorism, and before that, 300 years of Spanish terrorism. So terror can distort you, especially when it's a long-standing chronic terror, like 500 years of terror. But as bad as my mother's people had it, I would dare venture to say European peoples had it worse because they're dealing with 2,000 years of all out warfare. And they're also dealing with, and of course, I shouldn't say they as a generalization because there's so much diversity within Europe. Um, but we're working with, we have to dig deeper, even deeper than my mom's people do. And my mom's people have to dig pretty deep because, they took our language away. They took our ceremonies away. They took everything away. So, but we still have a stronger connection to those roots than my European side, right? So, one of the things I wanted to do in my life was I wanted to connect with my European ancestry. So I had to go back to Europe for that. Hold on one second, gotta sneeze. And false alarm. So I got to go to Switzerland, which some of you may have read the essay that I wrote about. It has different forms in different places on the internet, but I kind of like it that way. But one of them was called "The Story of How Humanity Fell in Love with Itself Again." Another one was called "Reconnecting with Our Indigenous European Roots." Um, but that in that essay, I talk about how I went to Switzerland and I connected with the mountains and had a really profound experience with the mountains. And the mountains just kind of were teaching me that I was still, an indigenous child of those lands, even if I didn't know the language or the ceremonies, that didn't change the fact that they still work. The sacred mountains are still sacred. They're still beaming, incredible energy, for lack of a better word. They're still listening to us. They're still holding medicines. And while some of that and a lot of that indigenous knowledge was wiped out through the Roman expansion and what have you, that doesn't mean that the medicine itself was wiped out. Maybe the knowledge or the language around it was, but the medicine was not wiped out. Medicine's always there inside of us and all around us. So our job, I think, is to tap back into that and to be the ones who begin to research whatever scraps and shreds that still survive. Some of them are, someone's calling in from Wales. Some cultures are much more intact. The Welsh language is on a rebound, despite also being prohibited for a long time. The Welsh, I feel like, are like the Native Americans of the UK. They just got like colonized and beaten down, and their language was prohibited, and they were called savages by King Edward and all this BS. And they still retain their language, their ceremonies, and their way of life despite it all. And so yeah, there's some areas where the knowledge is less fragmented. Um, but then there's others that are extremely fragmented, but that doesn't mean that the fragments we have left don't matter. They do, and they can be really instructive and insightful clues, even windows into deeper knowledge. For instance, I found a calendar from the UK that was having to do with the trees. So it was a tree calendar, and each time of the year corresponded to a different indigenous plant from the UK. And as we know, a lot of plants have been destroyed, and probably some of them went extinct during the British takeover of indigenous Scottish, Irish, and Welsh homelands. However, not all of them went away. And what can those plants teach us? So I was grateful to go back home. And one funny thing that happened was I was teaching at Schumacher, which many of you may know. It's in Devon, England. And there was like, this beautiful time there. I went to the sacred sites on the land and just had a fabulous time. Not fabulous in the sense of like fine dining and whatever, but in the sense of like I got to connect with the spirit of the land. Um, and we had a full moon ceremony on top of the tors, which are these beautiful rock structures which our ancestors used to pray with, and apparently still do because we did a ceremony there. And the full moon was rising as the sun was setting, and it was on opposite sides of the horizon. So it was really magical. And then the ladies were putting there was on these rock formations, there's these pools of water on top because there's these natural depressions where the water collects. And so we were putting the holly and the apple and the mugwort into the water to honor it and to honor the sacred plants. So there's meaning to all of that. It's not just about throwing plants in the water. There's it's a way of remembering to remember. It's a way of reminding each other and ourselves um, how im- how these how important these plants are in our lives, the role that they play, the medicines they provide, the foods that they provide, the relationships that they provide with us and with each other as plants, and reaffirming that we want to be in that relationship with these plants. So that was all wonderful, and then I went home to Turtle Island here, what we call America, and I was in San Francisco, and I went to my auntie's house, and she had our family book open, and she said, "Oh, this is our family manor." It's like a manor, I don't know what manor, like a house, like a family house, an old house from our forebears, and it was called the Sweet Manor because my dad's mom's maiden name was Sweet, and it was, in Devon, England. And I was so shocked because I was like, "Whoa, I accidentally went home. I didn't even know that Devon is where my ancestors are from." And somehow the creator just put me right there. So that was really obviously a big surprise to me and sort of like, those times when it's too coincidental to be an accident and you're just like, "Whoa, that's weird." And you appreciate it because it shows you that this world is not just chaos. There's a creative force at the very least that is that's intelligent and intentional. So to me that was part of my reclanning process, was just being in prayer about it in the first place and just starting to wonder. And I wrote some songs about it. I wrote a song called Mamulad, which means motherland in Welsh, which I'll share with you if you can remind me before I jump off. Um, so, anyways, that's just a little bit about my reclining journey. Um, and I think that each of us are basically very, very innately connected to our ancestors. And so, to me, you don't always need ancestry.com or a DNA test to figure out who you are. You can pray it into your life. Um, and it's interesting because many of us are a mixture of people like me, right? We have many different clans. Um, Even as a Dene woman, it's hilarious because Dene people are also a big jumble of other people, other native people. We have a dozen languages spoken or more in New Mexico and Arizona alone. And I probably have DNA from all of those language groups, all of those indigenous groups that jumbled up together to co-create the DNA community, the Dene community. So even our purebred ancestors are mixtures of things too. But I think what's important is that even though they were mixtures of people, they formed a language community. Let's take the Welsh, for example. They formed a language community, they formed a science based on the land. They formed a method of healing and a method of prayer, which was connected to the blue stone, the same stone that they make Stonehenge out of. They formed a connection to certain animals and plants. And this was part of an ecosystem, a holistic system. And these relationships with these plants and animals was very intimate, I should say, is very, because it's still going, is very intimate. For instance, certain sheep and other herbivores would co-evolve with certain human communities for thousands of years. Um, what happens when two species hang out together that long is they can develop a symbiotic microbiological relationship, meaning the breath of the sheep is going to stimulate the microbiome within that human group in a way that no other sheep in the world can. And beautifully, the reverse is also true. No other person except the Welsh could breathe and exchange breath with the sheep and stimulate their microbiology the same. And this science is starting to come out that, we had even our breath connected us. And same with the plants. That's something Western science does know actually, is that the plants give off um, gases and we breathe them in, and vice versa. But what I've been told is it's even more complex than that. It's not just, oh, we're getting CO2, rather, we're getting oxygen from the trees. We're giving them CO2. It's more complex because we're also giving them our DNA. We're giving them our spit, in the air. We're giving them our essence that is probably more complex than any scientist has yet to try to explain, um, and vice versa. So not only that, but you have to also take into account the microbes within us. And it looks like just Lila's talking to you, but actually there's billions of organisms working together to make me to talk to you right now. I come with an entourage, and we all do. We all have billions of life forms within us at every moment. And so it's fascinating, probably trillions actually. I don't know the exact number, but as you all know, very, very, very many organisms live within us, on our skin, in our mouth, in our nose, in our everywhere. And so as we walk around, we are not just related to everything around us, but as one of my elders says, we are made of related. So that might take you a few weeks to understand, because it took me a few weeks to understand, a few years actually, but to be made of related. So when you start to understand that I'm not just Lyla, you're not just Matthew, um, and on, but that we are a complex network of life. And so when we reclan, we're really reconnecting to a whole community, not just a human community. We're connecting to a land. So this is important because indigenous cultures around the world, part of what defines them as such is that they're connected to place, right? Um, and each of us are connected to a place or places. Some of us live there still, some of us don't. But what's important is that the traditional foods that we all used to eat, that our ancestors used to eat, are very important because they feed us in a way that other foods just won't. So for me, I have to eat the churro sheep. They have four horns, they're very woolly, and they descend from our ancient sheep, the ones that we had um, before Columbus came. And these churro sheep with the four horns are sacred to us. And they are a lean meat. Unfortunately, they're an endangered species right now. And they're they've been largely replaced by Rambouillet and Merino sheep, mostly from Europe. So these Rambouillet and Merino sheep are very fatty. So their meat has a high fat content. And the churro sheep is very lean. And not only is it very lean, but it's the type of meat down to the DNA that our people ate for tens of thousands of years. So our bodies know how to metabolize it. So when you take someone out of their indigenous land for whatever reason, you're taking them away from a set of relationships that were woven together meticulously, genetically, microbially, spiritually for thousands and thousands of years. So we can obviously survive in our non-indigenous environment. We can do that. Um, but what I've been taught is that it is important to reconnect. It is important to go home physically. And that when we do this, um, we can heal our body, we can heal our spirit, we can feel our ancestors, and the land needs us too, because your DNA is unlike any in the world. And so your DNA is the land misses you too. You the land can do things for you that no other land can do, and you can do things for the land that no other person can do. So going home is important. It's scary sometimes, right? For so many reasons. Um, but it is important. And to do it in a safe way. A lot of the reasons why we left the home is because it wasn't safe in the first place. But if we can arrange it in a way that is safe, um, then the spirits will come. So, on that note, sacred sites are sacred for a reason. Um, Indeed, all the earth is sacred. Every speck of dust, every square inch of the land and sea. And also, there are these places where our ancestors would pray. And they weren't doing it because they were stupid and primitive and superstitious. They were doing it because they actually understood some of the most sophisticated sciences in the world. Um, they understood that there can be multiple planes of existence occurring simultaneously. Both the physical and the spiritual can coexist. Um, and that under the right conditions and with the right intention, these things could align in a very powerful way. So, returning to the sacred sites in prayer, because a lot of these places were to pray, um, can be a big part of reclaiming for me, and a big part of being a true human being. Because to be a true human being, you have to understand that your body is an instrument, um, and it always has been. It always, throughout time, our bodies have been instruments, and that this instrument um, was created to engage in certain functions, for lack of a better word. And so, the function that I believe we're here to do is to bring the spirits here. So, in order to do that, it has to be pure. Um, it can't be for money, and it can't be for fame. And it has to be for a selfless reason. So it's just what I was taught. Feel free to disagree. And that when you're in this state of prayer for others, maybe someone in your family is sick, Maybe the world is unraveling and you just want to fucking make a dent in trying to help it not all go to shit. You know, maybe your children are having a hard time. Maybe your marriage is having a hard time. Whatever it may be, maybe you're having a hard time. And there's this one group that they'll make all these prayers for 4 days for others, and on the 4th day, they'll make their prayers for themselves. And I liked that. Even though when I say, it's a selfless prayer, I think that is important to remember to pray outward. But I also, of course, think it's good to pray inward as well. Um, so it's important to go to these sacred sites and to leverage our body as an instrument. Um, to talk more about that obviously would be more appropriate, not on a Zoom call, but maybe in person. Um, but what I can say on a high level is just what I said, is that I was taught that it's a place of prayer. It's not a place to make money, and it's not a place to self-aggrandize. Um, and if you're there for pure reasons, then the gateway can open. Um, and that purity is a prerequisite because the spirits are love. They aren't greed. They aren't fear. They are love. And so when we can align with them, they can come through. Um, and they know we're not perfect, so you don't have to be perfect to pray or perfect to go to a sacred site. If that was true, none of us could go. Um, but it's just that the intention is to try and help others. So to me, reclaiming is that, it's reconnecting with our animals. A good example is the Maasai. We probably all heard of them in Africa. Um, I was blessed to interview a really brilliant Maasai woman, and she was saying that the cows are sacred to them, and that they've been with those cows for a long time. And they say that the men love their herd more than they love their wife, which I know is somewhat of a joke, but it's just to give you a sense of how deeply they cared for these animals, how much they meant to them. Um, and they they walked together in this world. We have our allies, our animal allies, and that's not just it's not just a story. It's a real thing. We're meant to walk together with the horse, with certain sheep, um, with certain goats, even certain dogs and birds. And if you notice the smell of a horse, it smells good. It smells like nothing else in the world. That's the feeling of the essence working on us. When you smell the horse, it has a certain um, healing power. And what's crazy is they like the way we smell. So there's a symbiosis going on. So we're meant to live together. Or maybe it's fish. Some people have fished the same fish for thousands of years. Maybe it's oysters. Maybe it's eels. On and on and on. There's so many. That's the taro of the Pacific Islanders and the South Americans. This root plant, so important that they developed all kinds of genetic, metabolic connections to this being. So I think reclaiming has a lot to do with that, to connecting with our ancestors, connecting with our plants and animal relatives, and connecting with our sacred sites. So I would encourage each of us to go to the sacred sites wherever they are. and to make an offering. It could be your breath. It could be mugwort, could be holly, could be ash, both the ash tree and the ash. Um, could be a lot of things. And so when you go with the offering, you make your prayer. And that's going to be big because every prayer is heard and every prayer is answered. So the Romans took away a lot because they had a lot taken from them. And not just the Roman period, but also the scientific Enlightenment era, too. They took a lot as well. With good intentions, they wanted to protect us from the church. They wanted to protect us from a lot of the fetters that were limiting us. Um, but when they threw out the church, they also threw out spirituality. And so if you go to Europe now, a lot of the places, science is their religion. Um, and it's a lonely way to live because there's no magic allowed. Um, there's no magic possible. And therefore, if it's not possible, it won't happen because Creator only can do what we permit Creator to do. Um, there's some things Creator obviously can do without our permission. But as it pertains to us and our bodies, Creator's very respectful of our free will. And we often limit Creator with our own mind. And so we need to take back our indigenous mind from the Romans, and we need to take our spirituality back from Francis Bacon and Descartes. So these are part of our reclaiming processes, I believe, as Europeans. So I'm going to stop there. We have about 10 more minutes. Does anyone want to say anything or ask anything? We can do a little round robin here if we want.
Oh, I'm from Wales, Carolyn, and it was so interesting hearing you talk about the Welsh, the sheep, because I was thinking the sheep. I know them, but I've never really had beautiful connection with the sheep. Then I just remembered something that's really opening my heart right now, and it's about my little girl when she was 4 years old, and they're taking her well camping, and she suddenly just disappeared. We're by a river, and as a mother, I'm looking for where my child is. Where's she gone? Where's she gone? I can't find her anywhere. And just stopped looking for a moment, and then I saw across the little brush of the trees, in the next meadow, I could see a flash of colour amongst the sheep. And when I went over and got a bit closer, all the mama ewes were on the outside, and all the lambs were in the middle. And in the centre of those lambs, which was a little flash of colour, was this little 4-year-old girl singing to the lambs. And as I crossed the brush and came over, the sheep saw me and the ewes ran off, and then the lambs followed their mothers. And when I reached my little girl and picked her up, her eyes were so luminous, I could hardly even look at them. So she was holding and knowing that symbiotic relationship with the sheep that was in her. And I've got tears in my eyes because I'm remembering. And, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll treasure that story. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. Thank you so much for your words, Lyla. I really feel them rippling through, and I feel they will continue to do so over the coming days. I feel to ask something perhaps personal, for want of a better way of putting it. I suppose it's coming from how I have days where the grief that I feel in my chest is so heavy I can barely breathe. And it's definitely bigger than my own. I know a lot of people probably can relate to that. And so I ask you, what is it that helps you in those moments and keeps you going, keeps that fire, keeps that flame in the times that we find ourselves in, which I speak for myself at least, can sometimes feel so isolating.
Yeah. Can you speak more a little bit to that isolating part so I can perhaps
Yeah,
respond a little bit?
it feels like a theme that's been coming up in these circles actually with many of you here on this call, but um it's like it's almost like the there's a remembering that is being birthed, but the fires to kind of hold that in a safe space aren't spreading widely enough, or aren't, like, I personally feel quite a fragmentation where I can feel like, finally I can drop into this knowing in spaces like this, or in certain communities, or ceremonies, or being out on the land. And then it feels like I'm constantly slapped in the face with just everything else. And it feels like there's this fragmentation going on. And within that, I just find it difficult to gather all the pieces of myself somehow. I mean, that's just my own personal experience of the isolation, where I can feel so kind of understood, or I feel a strong sense of belonging, or like, we're getting somewhere, and then I feel miles and miles away from it. On an average day out in the city, or yes, it's quite difficult to pinpoint, but it's like a separation, then a coming together, and a separation, then a coming together. But the separation feels really wide at the moment.
Separation from spirit, from community, from the fire you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
or all of the above?
A bit of all of the above at
Yeah.
times, yeah.
Got you. Um, so the first part about the feelings and the weight of the feelings, intergenerational trauma, as we know, is so real, all too real. And you're right that they have done some epigenetic studies on animals, for better or worse, that show that even though the mouse didn't go through the trauma of the parent, they still exhibit the same exact behaviors as the parent, which is blew my mind. I don't condone testing on our rat relatives, but it was quite a big thing for me to see that. And but in any case, so and then we also have our personal trauma too, and they're often very, very, very related. Because if it wasn't for the ancestral trauma, we wouldn't have had to go through all that crap as a child because our parents would have been healthy and da 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 da. So, um, to me, the weight of the pain and the weight of the grief and the sorrow is actually sacred. And it's nothing to run away from. Um, of course, that's easier said than done because it's a lot. It's a lot, and I feel it every day too, every day. And I've been very intentionally trying to heal for like 13 years, and I still feel it. But that's partly because the first 10 years of my healing, I actually didn't realize I wasn't doing it right. Because what I learned was that I was healing intellectually, but I wasn't healing somatically. And so to feel everything was really important. Um, and so these days I will feel really bad. And I used to be like, oh no, I'm feeling bad. This is bad. I should take some antidepressants. I should go listen to some happy music. I should go call my friend. I need to feel better. I need to feel better. But now I'm like, okay, I'm feeling bad. This is good because this means I'm feeling stuff that's asking to be felt. And the good thing about feeling is that it's not for nothing, because when we honor the emotions, is what I've been taught anyways. When the emotion comes, if we push it away, it can't get released. So when it comes, if we just sit with it, very hard, and especially when we've been trained away from that feeling, then it can be released. And I'm not talking about the surface feeling. I'm talking about the feeling, what we're actually feeling. For instance, I would be very upset at a man. I'm just so upset, so distraught. But deeper down, I'm upset with myself because maybe I was intimate with someone before I really knew them. And I felt like I didn't honor myself. So there's this shame. But then, even deeper than that, there's this fear that I've let down the creator because I wasn't intimate in a place that was more stable and committed. So when you get down to the core of it, there's these really terrifying feelings, right? I let down the creator. Ooh, that's a big one, right? But when I just sat with that for a while and I voiced it, it became more and more clear, like, hey, that's not how creator works. Creator's not gonna, um, you know, X you out and write you off ever for anything. And oh, by the way, maybe you weren't even choosing to be intimate. Maybe that was you reacting out of your trauma because you were abused your whole childhood and teenagehood. So maybe you didn't even do anything wrong. You know what I'm saying? So there's like this going and sitting with these really challenging emotions. Or maybe for the men, oh gosh, the men, it seems so hard to be a man these days because they have so much emotions and even less space to be allowed to feel them. And Coyote is constantly working to break us down and trick us. That intimacy thing with me, it was a trick to make me feel awful about myself. So Coyote is always working to trick us out of our power, out of our self-love, and distort our self-image. So one thing my ancestors understood was that we were in a spiritual battle and Coyote is constantly working. Now, Coyote doesn't have any power. He only has the power we give to him. But one of his tricks, as they say, is to not know he's even there, working on us constantly. And so Coyote has no power. We're not afraid of him, but we acknowledge he's there. We acknowledge and we try to learn the tricks that he has, and we try to teach our children how to sidestep those tricks. So what I was taught is that Coyote will scare you away from some of the feelings that are most important for us to feel, like that fear that maybe I let down the creator. That's so terrifying. So when I start inching towards that feeling, it's like this big fear comes up and I get scared away. But if I can get over that hump and face that, Coyote being like, oh, don't go over here, it's really scary. And just say, no, I'm going over here. And I keep going, write it down, speak it, talk to a friend you trust, whoever, whatever, however you face it. Then it can be released and it's like a thorn coming out of us. So that's a really, really way too long-winded way of saying that my personal thoughts is that our feelings are our friends. And if we can honor them, they can be released. Now, to speak very briefly, because I know we're out of time, to the isolation piece. I truly feel that going to our sacred sites will help us, because when you go to the sacred sites and you make the offering, that's when the ancestors come. And when the ancestors come and you just take a moment with no fear, not for the self and no fear, you, at least for me, I mean, not just for me, for everyone, we can feel that we're never alone. And we can feel that there's a massive rush of ancestors flowing within us and around us 24/7. And that doesn't mean you'll never be lonely again or fragmented or feel fragmented from society again, because it's almost the more you connect to the ancestors, the more alienated you feel in this world. Because this world is very, I don't even know it sometimes. I feel very out of place here. I feel very out of place. And that's okay. It's hard. I feel you all the way. It's hard to find good friends, good places where I'm actually understand what people are talking about and why they're talking about it. Very rare for me. This is one of those places. So, but I do always have the ancestors with me. So that's maybe not the most complete or best answer in the world, but I would just, again, encourage us to go to the sacred sites and make those prayers, because that's when that rush comes that helps us remember that we're never alone. Um,
Mm.
and that the fragmentation of society is an ancient one, unfortunately. It's thousands years old, this battle. Did you want to share something? Sorry. Oh no, you're good.
Sorry.
Okay, I thought I would. Okay. I thought I heard you trying to say something. So yeah, the fragmentation of society is very old, especially in Europe. And that makes the mending of it all the more precious. That makes moments like these and calls like these all the more beautiful, because we get to be there for each other and we get to hand a flower to the doorstep of this brokenness. And there's something very beautiful about that. And I think that's what makes me feel less alone, and always has since I was a kid, is just being able to hand that flower to anyone, especially those who are broken. I never had a lot of friends in school, so I would make friends with the people who also didn't have friends, or just like, give a helping hand. And I realized that, like, there's plenty of opportunities for connection that are probably more fulfilling than hanging out with the popular kids anyways. Uh, so anyways, Beckon, yes, help me stop blabbing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Because I'm based in Australia, and I lived here my whole life. And I think coming into a circle like this and a group like this, where we're talking about reclaiming and getting to know yourself as someone coming into the space, I feel like there is some fragments of my journey in reclaiming where I come from a place where most of my ancestors are not from this land. They are from England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Germany, Italy, Russia, Poland. I feel like we laugh and call ourselves European mongrels because we are a mixture of blood. But here, I guess, being born of this primordial land, I feel also very connected to the Indigenous spirit of the land, but I'm not Indigenous to this land. And so that, I guess, sinking my teeth and my body into this land feels natural, but also I don't know what it's like to put my feet on the land of my blood. And so going to sacred sites here is sometimes it's like, is this right for me? And it is. We are all one. But how do I connect with the sacred sites if I'm not there? If that makes sense. Like I plan to take a journey to Europe to have a similar experience of reclaiming. Maybe Matthew understands because he's been in Wales for 3 years. Going home, going back to my ancestors and seeing what it feels like to be in the forest and on the grass and with the trees there, etc., etc., etc. So dropping into sacred sites here, it's like I don't have here in this place something that is mine. I don't know what is mine when it comes to dropping into sacred sites. It just is what it is. It is what it is here, and we just drop into the land, and what the Indigenous people feel is sacred is what I feel is sacred, because I honor that process and that intuition and the feminine and the masculine aspects of this land. And I guess I don't really know what my question is. It's like how to be in this space when you're not of this land. It's like you're a product of colonization and displaced, I guess, in some degree.
Yeah, I think most of my first talk was an attempt to convince everyone to go back home. Not permanently per se, unless you want to, but to do that journey that you speak of. But the reason I think that you and many others are fond of Indigenous Australian culture, which I agree is so beautiful, is because it is a mirror of our own. It's kind of like, what's that silly phrase? Something recognized, game recognized game or whatever. I forget but we takes one to know one kind of thing. So it's like the mirror that they provide, because you're looking around the world, right? It's like, where am I? You see Walmart. Well, for us, we have Walmart. You see McDonald's, and you're like, that's not who I am. And then you see the Aboriginal culture, and you're like, that resonates. That makes sense. So I think that here in the States, it's very frequent where completely white folks will just be completely resonating with our Indigenous culture. And to me, I always say that, like, you're just seeing yourself in us. You're seeing and you're missing your own Indigenous culture. But the good news I wanted to say is that you can do both. You can go home, you can connect because you deserve that too. Arguably, you need it. And you can also be there. And I know white is a very vague term, but a white woman who resonates with Aboriginal people in Australia is a good thing because they need all the help they can get. As you know, it's a terrible situation. So you're a blessing to them and you're an ally to them and they need you. And so I think that both can coexist at the same time, that you can have this connection. You can be very helpful there, in ways that you can do things that they can't do, and they can do things that you can't do. So when you walk together, you have all the bases covered, and you can be a formidable team. So it's both, they're both true, that you're connected to your own homeland and you're connected to this homeland. And Creator put you there for a reason, so maybe you have work there to do. The last thing I want to say, and then we probably should wrap up, is that I know people have more questions. I really apologize. I think we have another class, right? Do we have a second class?
Sure, if you want.
Okay. Oh, we hadn't planned it. If we do, please bookmark your question. The last thing I want to say is that Europe is an interesting word. It comes from Europa, who was a mythological character who was stolen by Zeus and raped. So I think it's also interesting as we reclan to also rename, to bring our names back for the land. Because I think it's really sad that we name our motherland after this woman who was stolen and raped. Or maybe it's beautiful that we do that. Maybe we're taking her back from Zeus. I don't know what we're doing. But to me, it's very fascinating that this is the name that has been chosen. Or maybe the name that's been forced upon everyone, or both. Because I think she has much older names than this. She's more complex than this. And there was a clay effigy that they found in German soil that was, molded into a shape of a woman. And they radiocarbon dated it. It was 40,000 years old. So this is how long Europeans have been honoring the feminine and taking the time to mold the earth into a shape of a woman to honor the sanctity of women and of the earth. So this is who we are. That's, as far as I'm concerned. Everything else that we didn't do that to ourselves. That's what other forces did to us. So as you reconnect, and going home to decolonize what home is, as you go back. So with that, I know we have more questions. I'm very, very sorry we didn't get to them. I probably should jump off now. It's about 9:20 here. But if there's anything you wanted to do to close, I'd be happy to support that.